Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, Europe. Buenas tardes, Europa. Bon après-midi, Europe. Hope you had a great start of the year, and welcome to the first Digital Friday lunch organized by the European Campaign Playbook. My name is Sebastian Rodriguez, and I will be your host today. And we prepare a very cheerful and forward-looking session. But this week was a dark one. This week, we witnessed the consequences of authoritarianism in the US. We saw how a violent mob of Trump supporters, armed with weapons and encouraged by the president itself, stormed the Capitol building. And as you know, they all had one objective: to disrupt and subvert the lawful counting of the electoral votes and to prevent Joe Biden from being declared president of the United States. And why do I bring this? Because this inevitably brings us to talk about what our community is about and why it is so important. And I would like to do that before I introduce the topic of today and I introduce our guest. So what our community is about and why it's so important. For years, populists and nationalists have followed a very successful playbook, first to win campaigns and people's hearts, and then to keep themselves in power for as long as they can. Sure things, campaigns, and we know it, are always nasty. But one knows that things have gone too far when we witness what happened this week in the States. This attack on our democracy did not happen overnight, though. The last 4 years have had no precedent. Okay, that's for sure. But it started long before Trump even ran for president. Trump, in other words, is a symptom, not a disease. And Europe, unfortunately, is no stranger to this phenomenon. In this context, spin doctors and campaign gurus have found fertile ground to follow a playbook to win campaigns. Their playbook was all about dividing, polarizing, and separating people into warring camps. And the latest innovations in campaign technology have made it even easier for them to do that. So now we, pro-Europeans, we need to create our own playbook. Not to divide, but to unite, not to polarize, but to bring people together and defend our European values. And this is what our community is about. It's created by a group of pro-European professionals who got in touch during the great lockdown via Zoom, and we decided to fight back. And we started to find allies and friends so that we together can fight against populism and nationalism and authoritarianism here in Europe. We need a new coalition of people from left to right, but with one thing in common, which are our European values. And we as campaigners, we need to make sure that we follow these European values and we fight for these European values in every campaign that we advise, in every advocacy campaign, in every tweet, in every post. Together, we want to write the playbook for pro-European campaigns that is made by and for the members of this community. And of course, we don't make money out of this and we don't receive funding from anyone. The cost from running these operations, such as the license of the website or the streaming platform that we're using, are covered by ourselves from our own pockets. We are always looking for professionals who want to get involved. So if you are one of them, go to our website, which is on the screen at the moment, www.campaignplaybook.eu/get involved. Now, without further ado, and I'm sorry for this short introduction, but I think we all felt the same way this week. And I think it is important to remind us why we are doing what we are doing ultimately. So welcome again, everyone, to our first event of the year. Our event is about what to expect the year ahead, what to expect in 2021. And I see a few people who are joining us on the screen. So let's say hi to them. Here is Sam. Hi, Sam. How's it going?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. We also have Emilian. They're two really good colleagues of mine. Hi,
Hi
Emilian.
there. Hi, guys. Well, Happy New Year to you too. Lovely to see
How's
you.
it going? How's
Well,
family?
Well, okay, we're good. We're good. Well, waiting for the vaccine. This is what we're doing now. Literally.
Indeed. We also have Monica joining us from Poland. Hi, Monica.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Happy New Year, Monica. How's everything? Yeah, are you back in Brussels?
No, not yet. I will be back in February. In January, I have some exams to struggle and different things, so not yet.
Okay. Let's start. I mean, to me, this event was really about 2021 being a year for positive change and all that. But then we saw what happened this week in the US, and I feel that we need to talk about it. Do you have any reactions? Do you want to share something with us in addition to what I already said? Okay, I'm pretty sure we are all okay. Sam, go ahead.
It's just a very big topic. I mean, it was quite shocking to many people, especially in Europe, because we don't tend to see things like this happening so much. So it was quite strange to see that. I mean, many people might have expected it to happen a bit sooner in the US, and it didn't. And it's certainly a challenge looking forward. The one thing to consider is that this kind of thing will not happen again for the time being, at least, because now the Democrats will now be controlling the presidency, the Senate, and the House. So it means hopefully these kind of activities will not be happening ever again. So at least I think we have some respite for that going forward. But then thinking ahead to Europe and the elections that we have this year, you already shared that there's a list of all the different elections coming up, sort of various national and local ones, presidential ones in Europe. So I think there's lots of things to look forward to this year to see, how things may or may not change in those countries across Europe, and to see if that political landscape changes as well.
Yes, indeed. That's one of the things that we wanted to cover today. The upcoming elections. I mean, we have in Germany late in September, the Portuguese coming up, the Dutch, and we will see. I mean, we're very interested in seeing first what is important for voters in the post-COVID era. Is it going to be health? Is it going to be the economy? So it's going to be a little bit of both. So we will go one by one, or at least we will go through the most important ones. But also, I want to do a round and ask you, apart from the elections, if there is one taking place in your country, which I don't think it's the case. Not in yes, in the UK, the local elections for sure. But in Romania or Poland, and you want to tell us, what's the background, how things are developing, then that would be great. But also, what do you expect for this year? Let's do a quick round. Perhaps we can start with Monica.
Okay, so still we are talking about the upcoming elections, yes? And do I understand it proper? Okay. So firstly, I hope that people in Europe won't be inspired by the situation in America, because there is something, I noticed something like when something happened first in America and later countries in Europe, for example, Poland, are getting more and more inspired by these actions. And actually, it's super dangerous. In Poland, we are, our president, for example, was super friendly to the Trump, and during the Trump presidency, people has affected a lot, and I hope so that the European will come different way. So Actually, I don't know what to add, so maybe someone else.
What's the situation in Poland at the moment? Are you expecting elections taking place in the near future?
No, this year. Oh,
Okay.
maybe we'll see. It depends on the situation because it's still a little bit not safe, and actually some people are supposing the election during the spring, but it won't be the normal one. So it depends on the situation in the country, but hopefully not this year.
And what else are you expecting this year? You work at the EU institutions, and you work in communications policy. What's in there that you are looking for? I know that you have quite a few trends to watch out for.
Okay, so firstly, the most important is still the link with the pandemic. It's our third world war, I can say, so it would be the first step to take care of that and all that vaccination process. In Poland, actually, I think that other countries also lack of many vaccines. It's still not enough, so let's hope that the process will get quicker, hopefully, but we will see. And the second one, for me, the most important, is the climate change. It's still we still struggle. I don't know, we should make people more awareness of this problem, and I agree with all that European stages with the, I don't know how to say it, to throw all that plastic from the environment. It's super important. So I think that two factors are the most important during the upcoming year.
Yeah. There will be a lot of advocacy about climate change for sure. At least a lot of action taking place in Brussels. I'll bring our good old friend Denis to the conversation. There he is.
Good day, bună ziua, buenos días, dzień dobry.
Okay, we are doing a quick round to see what's coming up, or what each one of you think it's important, is going to be important in 2021. Monica had just finished. I'll ask another volunteer, probably Emilian. You want to take the floor?
Yeah. Hi, Danish. How are things? First of all, Happy New Year to you as well. And about what's coming up next, I think last time we discussed quite a bit about the elections in Romania, which took place towards the end of the year. There were a lot of surprises there, some of the smaller parties led by former president and former prime ministers, two former prime ministers, didn't reach the 5% threshold, and they were left out. Instead, there is a new party, a weird animal, like a nationalist, leftist. It's a weird bunch that reached 10%. And obviously they became not a major player, but a voice, an important voice. And right now, nobody wants to get in bed with them, not even the Social Democrats. But the future, according to our experience, will bring us surprises. So I'm pretty sure other parties will negotiate with them if necessary. I'm saying this as a context because right now there is a coalition with the Liberals and the US Surplus and the Hungarian Minority Party, which Danish is very well is familiar with, and everything looks okay, but it's like a honeymoon. I'm pretty sure that things, knowing how the coalitions work in Romania, I'm pretty sure that this marriage will, I wouldn't say come to an end, but will become very, very bumpy. And well, I have a little one that really makes a lot of noise here, and she wants to be part of the conversation, I suppose. And but we'll see. I think a lot will depend how the government will perform. This coalition, I mean, and obviously everything is related now to COVID-19. I have to say I'm not sure, because I heard Monica about the lack of vaccines. I wouldn't be worried, in particular in Romania, about that. I would be worried more about people not wanting to vaccinate. According to a study, like a survey, there were only 30-something% of the population that said, yes, I want to get vaccinated. And there are a lot of people who say no, who refuse, in particular those very close to the church, and in particular to the new party that I just mentioned, which has, if you remember the lovely Greek Golden Dawn, this name, the part of this name, the abbreviation is gold, aur. Yeah, there is a lot of. I'm pretty sure their people, like their voters, will definitely say no, a big no to the vaccination. So for the current government, all depends on how they will manage the next period. If people will see results, because everybody's fed up with how Social Democrats made a lot of promises, but they didn't deliver. That's why they actually lost. So if they manage to do these two, they will be they will do okay, at least for the short, medium term. But if they don't manage well this vaccination, and they don't come up with the really quick results in terms of economy, infrastructure, and so on, I think this coalition is not going to last more than a year and a half.
Okay, let's.
No elections for sure for the next at least 4 years, I would say, because as I said, with these coalitions, people will get into new negotiations with different partners, even if now they say no, not in hell. In the future, they will change their mind if necessary.
Okay, thanks. And let's.
Yeah, it's very simple. And with this, I'm finishing. It's very simple. We, as Monica said, Romania had a very good relationship with the Trump administration. Maybe the president or other politicians were not that close in terms of supporting him, but they visited. They were welcomed by Trump in the White House. So I'm not sure. How if everyone is happy about Trump going away in Bucharest.
Okay. Interesting, and interesting to say that we have a fellow campaigner joining us very soon. I'm talking about the little one sharing the mic with you. So say hi to everyone, of course. Dennis, do you want to take the floor and tell us a little bit what you expect for this year? Any reactions on what we saw in the US this week? Anything that you have in mind for this year before we start analyzing specific trends?
Sure. So I would say that when you look at what happened at the US Capitol, I would say, of course, it is a very complex issue. A great number of reasons can be mentioned why citizens did what they did. However, I would say one fundamental issue is a failure of participatory democracy in the US. A great many number of citizens feel their voices are not being heard in Congress, in the White House, and they felt that this was their last resort in order to raise attention to the issues that matter to them. I would say when you look at 2021, from a European perspective, going from Washington to Brussels, there's 3 words you need to watch out for. Very exciting news on this front. European Citizens Initiative. So 2021 will be a huge test for this unique tool of participatory democracy that allows citizens from across the European Union to propose legislation. If you meet certain thresholds, so in 7 EU member states, you have to pass a certain amount of signatures. For example, in the Republic of Croatia, there was the threshold of 8,250 signatures. And also you need to gather altogether across the European Union 1 million statements of support, so signatures from EU citizens. And I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic, as Monica mentioned, has made it extremely difficult to conduct your normal day-to-day, going from house to house, knocking on doors, getting people to sign style campaign. And what I've seen is some very unique, new, alternative campaigning tactics coming out, especially from Central Europe. So to give you the example of Croatia, as I mentioned, you need to gather 8,250 signatures with all the lockdowns that are going on and the restrictions of movement. A great many number of citizens weren't able to mobilize. But there was an ECI on which I worked, the Cohesion Policy for the Equality of Regions and Sustainability of the Regional Cultures. And there we managed to gather the necessary amount of signatures, thanks to the support primarily of the Serb National Council, which represents the Serbian-speaking national minority in Croatia. And what they did was a very complex campaign whereby they would call people up on the phone. So rather than using 21st century instruments, you would go back to the 20th century and try to call people on the phone and say, could you please be so kind and print this out, sign it in your entire family at home, and then get it to us. Or if you have the internet, I'll tell you where to go online, and can you please sign it there? I know this sounds very simple, but we have to, I think, prepare for the worst, which is that this pandemic will continue to go on for weeks and months to come. And as such, you have to adapt to this situation. And let us not forget that in a great many number of territories within our European Union, especially among senior voters, utilizing the internet, social media is not a good channel through which you can reach them. So I think radio, television, and also newspapers, leaflets that can be delivered by post, and also telephones, so going back to 21st century elements, are going to become far more important. And here I would say there's an important trend, which is something that Emilia mentioned, namely vaccinations. How likely are citizens to get vaccinated? And in my country, Hungary, I can tell you that there was a very interesting survey conducted by Publicus on behalf of Népszava. And according to that, 50% of those who were asked from this representative pool said that they would not take the West European vaccine, such as, for example, the one created by AstraZeneca. So that means that according to this representative sample, currently, as things stand, 50% of Hungarian citizens would not want to take the vaccine. And as such, when you're campaigning and you're considering, for example, the 2022 Hungarian parliamentary elections, you might have a situation where for the next year, you will not be able to do significant door-to-door campaigning. So I would say for 2021 and for the 21st century, main trend to watch out for, a return to 20th century campaigning elements.
Indeed, and actually, one of the, I'm going to pick up a question that Eduardo sent us via YouTube, and he's pointing towards the same direction. The development of the grassroots movement all across the country. And one part of that is the inability to do big events, putting together like large crowds, and so yeah, it's always a welcome theme. These grassroots movements, I think those are very important for participatory democracy, and great work with I have to say, with the Minority Safe Pack, and with anything that is coming up in 2021. I'm sure it will be very exciting.
Actually, could I just mention here, Sebastian? So thank you so much for mentioning that. Just another element, which is that, of course, you need to gather a set amount of signatures, as I mentioned, 1 million signatures all across the European Union in order to have your legislative proposals taken up in the EU institutions. But as Sebastian said, there are certain European citizens initiatives like the Minority Safe Pack initiative, which meet that threshold. But the real work, I would say, starts then only, because then you have to start advocacy and lobbying. And here I would mention, again, the COVID pandemic has completely transformed advocacy and lobbying in the EU institutions. What you would normally do is you would try to grab people on the corridor, lobbying, the phrase is in the word, right? You go to lobbies and you wait there while you have the opportunity to meet with the right people that will make the decisions on your specific European Citizens Initiative. And here I would say something that is interesting is that you have a great many number of online meetings. Social media is much more important. So trying to do advocacy through Twitter on the assumption that the policymakers you're trying to reach are at home in lockdown and they are probably online on Twitter using their Twitter handle. So there's no team behind them and they will probably see that. Whereas normally they would be out in the field doing meetings. As opposed to that, you have to reach them through Zoom and online platforms similar to that. So I think advocacy and the advocacy element of the European Citizens Initiative especially has completely transformed it. Here, may I name drop the End the Cage Age ECI and Olga Kiku, who I know is tuning in here today, because of course they will have a public hearing in the European Parliament on February 1st. And unlike as it is normally, where you have people in person showing up, it's going to be all of their MEPs, more or less, tuning in primarily online, as well as their speakers. So it will be a very unique type of public hearing in the European Parliament where it will be public, but it will be completely online.
Thank you, Dinesh. Sam, I'm very interested, and we are of course reaching out to people who will be involved in the UK local elections, but I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about what to expect. Those are, of course, the first the first elections after Brexit actually happened. I don't know if it's gonna change that much, but you never know. With British politics, you can never know.
I mean, I think with local elections in the UK, as is with most countries, people do tend to vote a lot on the candidate themselves and not so much necessarily with how the party is performing at a national level. We've seen, for example, that the Liberal Democrats tend to perform typically very well at a local level, even if at a national level their polling does not improve and if they do not win so many seats at that level. So I think there is a connection, obviously, to national politics, but it's much looser based on the candidates. Whether Brexit has an impact, I doubt it. Perhaps in some constituencies where they feel it more closely. So whether there were things happening in Kent in the southeast, for example, and the individual positions of different local politicians may be having more of an impact because they are feeling it very, very closely. But maybe in other constituencies they will not notice it so much. Of course, the big election is the London mayoral election, which is just considered a local election that will happen this year in May. It was meant to happen last year. It looks like Sadiq Khan will again win the election, but I think mostly because London is becoming increasingly more moving towards the Labour kind of voting majority at the moment, because many Londoners feel quite alienated by the Conservative Party politics on a national level. So I think that's where you may see more of an influence of national politics, especially as Sadiq Khan has taken his role to be seen as a very international one. He was very often speaking at international events. He had a very, very public dispute with Donald Trump a few years ago. And so I think, again, Londoners see themselves as they will see things more on a national level as well. So I don't know exactly how we will see it. It will be interesting to see if there are changes, for example, where the Conservatives did very well in the previous election, to see if that is maintained in what was considered the Red Wall seats in the northern part of England. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that translates into local council elections, or have they lost that influence already? We're not sure. The Lib Dems are doing much worse than they were even 2 years ago. So can they still rally to improve or to maintain their reasonable local election performance? We're not sure. In terms of actually voting, the UK has quite a mature system of voting either by mail or by proxy. So I don't know if that will have such a big impact. The pandemic will have such a big impact in that case, although typically local elections have very low turnouts anyway. So if the pandemic is still in a full swing, then I suspect it will be even lower. However, there is already an infrastructure in place for postal or proxy voting. So I suspect that this will be encouraged even more so in the build up to the election. And so I imagine it will not have such a significant impact because we do already have those measures in place, which was not the case for some other countries in Europe and of course in the US, where it was quite a mixed bag of voting options. So yeah, I mean, let's see. I mean, I don't think there's been a huge amount of polling at a local level in the UK at the moment. But the trends at the moment show that the Labour and Conservative Party are almost neck and neck on the general theme at the moment. So I suspect we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out in May.
If I may, Sam, a couple of questions about the UK that I'm watching. The first is Scotland. So you said local elections have even lower turnout than other elections, but we do know that the pro-independence Scottish, they are very mobilized at the moment. You know, Brexit just happened. This is maybe an opportunity to send a message to Westminster. Whatever happens, and she's polling, Nicola Sturgeon, she's polling well above 50%. I think it's, according to the poll of polls, it's around 54%. And her as a figure, not the local elections are like hundreds or dozens of smaller elections, and the local elections candidates they carry a bigger weight, candidates at local levels. But still, probably, do you think there will be a strong message coming out from Scotland, or you think that, you know, in the current context, you know, those are local elections where you decide on whether the local services are running well, the schools, etc., or can this be, you know, used as a more national signal to Westminster, saying we want out, no, as they many will surely want.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine also, yeah, in Scotland for sure, the local elections carry more of a weight because it's about electing as well. I believe it's also electing the Holyrood elections, the Scottish Parliament this year as well, and of course that will have a big impact. However, what I would say is the Scottish National Party are performing very well, and they have been for many years now. So I don't think we will see any substantial change in how they approach things. We know that their policy is a policy of independence from the rest of the UK. They have maintained that, and they've said it on a regular basis for the last like 5-10 years. And so we know that won't change. They've also performed very well at national and local elections for the last 5 years, extremely well. Going back even further as well, they've been performing good too. So I think that regardless of what the outcome, the only big message will be if they perform worse. Because if they maintain the level that they are at, which is what is expected, I don't expect there'll be any changes. It'll be more of a status quo that, okay, they're still performing very high. They still have a dominance at national and local politics levels. And also then we know that they have the same policies that they've had also for the last 10 years. So I don't think, my expectation is there will not be a massive change. I don't think it will send any message. It will be a message which they've already been receiving in Westminster for the last 5-10 years. So I don't think there'll be any substantial changes based on this. It will just it will solidify and cement the position of Nicola Sturgeon and her party in Scotland, and they may then use it as evidence for continued support for independence. But they use every opportunity they get. They make an excuse to show that there's an increased support for independence, which there is. So again, I don't know if it will change an awful lot, the outcome, unless they do worse than expected.
I think Dennis had a question for you too.
Yes, Sam. I'm happy to see you've gone back to Brussels from London, and I see you've left a light on there in Brussels, as Alan Smith asked, perhaps not in the way that he meant it. I think what's very interesting is that even though Brexit negotiations have more or less concluded, the campaigns are starting already to determine the future EU-UK relationship. And here I want to mention a very important grassroots cause. namely the fact that Erasmus will no longer apply to the UK. Boris Johnson's UK government unilaterally withdrew from it. And I know that today, Dominik Frey, Piriti Shoma, Koragic Balinten, Zota Matuščik is tuning in from the hashtag Save EU Students campaign. And I'm sure they would like to ask, what do you think about new grassroots campaigns that are trying to create a new special relationship, as it were, between the EU and the UK to overcome Brexit? And what they want to do is essentially to create a new EU-UK student mobility scheme to replace Erasmus. So I'd be very curious to hear what you think. And just a figure, so we keep this in mind, right now, according to the EPP group, there are 24,000 EU students approximately studying in the UK. So the situation of those students has thankfully been protected in the European Parliament's negotiations. But the next cohort that will come after them, EU students in the UK who will come not as a result of Erasmus, but through other reasons. Sebastian and I, for example, we're EU citizens who studied in the UK, he at LSE and I at UCL. I am very, very optimistic that young people, as the folks I mentioned, are starting grassroots causes, but at the same time, I am quite sad that it has to be young people leading the charge, and it's not advocacy at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it will be kind of a wait and see, because we don't know exactly. We know the government will introduce a new scheme for student mobility called the Turing scheme, named after Alan Turing, and we don't know what the details of that will be. So I suspect once that becomes more clear, it will be more evident on what exactly there'll be something to campaign on. I mean, I doubt, I really don't expect that the government will change its position on this, because they've already announced that they will launch a new scheme. So I don't think returning to Erasmus is an option, at least for the time being. In terms of other, how those specific campaigns and advocacy campaigns can work, I mean, there's already a huge number of advocacy groups related to pro-EU values in the UK that have been around for at least the last 5 years now, since the referendum kind of period began. So there's plenty of infrastructure there for groups to kind of tap into and networks to build upon. It's interesting to see how it might work on a specific topical level. So on students, it's interesting. But again, now that you have to campaign almost on two levels, because you need to campaign at a European level, perhaps to MEPs or to your national governments in the EU to see to get support on this side, and then you also have to campaign in the UK to then campaign and lobby the government for your preferred outcome, because it's now they're separate, right? So there are different paths to achieve both things, and both sides have to come to an agreement on this. So it's not as straightforward as it was before. And now you have to think that, okay, well, even if I just campaign in the UK, it also means that you have to campaign in the EU to make sure that there is a receiving end to this, the point which you're trying to make. I think it will be a case of also, as I said earlier, waiting to see how Brexit will pan out. We don't know the full impact that will come about yet. Erasmus is probably one of the more visible elements, but there may be other issues and other areas which may impact people, and there may be specific campaigns on this too. Just the same way, I'm sure there'll be more campaigns from more right-leaning groups who think that they haven't gone further enough in different areas. I mean, I'm sure there will be people in the fishing lobby who think that there need to be, again, further amendments to the existing agreement. So I think there'll be campaigns on both sides. I don't think there'll be any serious campaigning for the UK to join the EU for a long, long time, because I think people need to also want to focus on what's happening in the UK at the moment and trying to manage what's happening. I would be surprised if there is any serious campaign from anyone. Certainly no political group, I believe, is going to be campaigning for joining the EU now. Maybe that will be a platform in the future, but certainly not for now. And until you have the major parties behind it, I don't think many of these will have much traction. But again, this is all a total personal opinion, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Indeed, and Sam, if I may say, I mentioned at the start of my remarks that I see a return to 20th century campaigning during COVID-19. Well, when it comes to the Alan Turing program, here I have to say, for all of you who are watching and are working in the advocacy field in the UK and the EU, the Alan Turing program is going to be a classic example of the 17th century British tactic of divide and conquer, which is, instead of having an agreement between the EU and the UK, it will be the UK and and Hungary, UK, and Estonia. So on the bilateral level, not at the EU level. And as a result of that, I have to say that I think consultants who are working in this field, in advocacy and lobbying, specifically relating to education, will have a lot of work this year in the member state capitals on this topic. And I completely agree with you, Sam. And again, how do we overcome this issue where you can't go out, you can't leaflet, you can't meet with MPs unless, you call them or, via Zoom, but then, they're afraid they might get recorded, quoted. So it's not the same as, sitting down one-to-one, right? So I've seen something very interesting. So I see that Maciej Manka is here watching us today. He started the hashtag Save EU Students campaign with his colleague. And what he did was he launched a UK House of Commons petition. So I think that petitioning and participatory democracy in particular will become very relevant. And I know that, as I mentioned, Dominic, Shoma, Balint, and Zosha are planning a European Parliament e-petition. So I think that we'll see some very exciting grassroots participatory democracy elements occurring online, since you can sign these petitions online in the EU and in the UK in 2021.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the petitions will work the same way in the UK as they do in perhaps other countries. At least we know that there were a huge volume of petitions which had extremely a high number of signatures throughout the kind of the Brexit period, which tantamounted to absolutely nothing. I mean, it was a rallying cry almost, and people were energized by that. But the government did not act upon any of those, the results of any of those wishes of those petitions. So again, important for motivating the group that you're working for and showing what you've achieved. I doubt the political effectiveness of this in the UK. I don't think it has a strong. You might have a few politicians who then advocate for the cause, but I don't think it will lead to any massive changes. What I would say in terms of technology as well is that I think this. I wonder if we're now talking a bit too much about the UK, and we should maybe move back to a more European or more broader level of discussion. So I'm thinking that, for example, there were two platforms which were, for example, very popular that were used to organize these riots in the US this week, and it was DLive and Parler, which are two other platforms for streaming and communication. And I wonder if these kind of applications and platforms will become popular in Europe as well for different levels. So again, this is linked a bit to your point there, Danesh, about how technology will be used or not. And I wonder if these apps will become more prevalent and used across the EU as well.
It's very interesting you mentioned that, Sam, because actually there has been just last month a new social media network launch in Hungary. It's called Hundub. I've registered on it. I highly recommend everybody check it out. And what they advertise is that they have no censorship whatsoever. So you can do whatever you want, post whatever type of content, complete absolute freedom of speech. I wonder, how successful this platform will be in the run-up to the 2022 Hungarian parliamentary election. I see that quite a few people have registered. And for example, if you ever wanted to be friends with Viktor Orbán, then you can very much join the platform and add him. And interestingly enough, it seems the social media team is doing a good job because they're approving all the requests. So I can say I'm friends with Orbán Viktor on Hundub. But when it comes to petitions, I would say you're right, Sam. So when it comes to the UK House of Commons, right, if you get 10,000 signatures, then you get the UK government to respond. This is usually 3 lines of text, not a very detailed response. And if you get 100,000 signatures, then the UK House of Commons potentially considers it for a debate. So it is quite possible that you will not get the coverage that you need. But I think we have to think in tactics, techniques, and tools. And this is one tool that you can use. And when it comes to the European Parliament, I can say that, for example, these 4 young people with the hashtag Save EU Students campaign, what they're doing is they're launching the European Parliament petition, but full disclosure, they reached out to me and they reached out to my MEP, Laurent Vince, and he has agreed to champion it. So we already have 104 MEPs behind this. So I can say that I think, of course, you're completely right, Sam. It's a good tool to raise awareness, but it will not yield the change that you desire in itself. So I'm looking forward to seeing many, many innovative tactics, techniques, and tools. And I really hope that the European campaign playbooks, texts, and blog posts and content on this will be quite thought-provoking for our viewers.
Indeed. Thank you, Dinesh. And for everyone who is interested about European citizen initiatives, e-petitions, Dinesh is going to coordinate a lot of content this year on this topic. So please reach out and stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of content coming very soon. I think we've covered one of these big trends. I completely agree with Dinesh, but there are, of course, other ones, and actually I had it prepared just for you to see that I'm saying the truth. I prepared like an agenda for the meeting, which you can see here on your upper right side of the screen. And I love that we always when we start, we ignore this agenda and then we go like issue to issue, jumping, and I think that's great. That's what a genuine conversation is about. But one of the issues that I'm gonna pick up now is the third one, emerging platforms. I completely agree with what Sam said. I think there are these platforms. I am very I am a user of Parler, but in an observer mode, because the Spain's far right is very active on that one. And the other one, I don't know exactly which one it is, but that's the whole point. I think we're gonna experience you can call it an emergence of new platforms, but also it's a fragmentation, because you have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, the big platforms, and they will continue playing an important role. But a lot of people, and not only in the far right, also in the far right or in the far left, they are moving to these platforms, and conversations are taking place that are not mainstreamed and we don't know about. There is also a platform that which is Twitch, that is very popular about young, especially more it's male dominated, but young millennials who started with that platform the main topic in that platform is gaming, is online gaming. But now one of the most popular type of content in the platform are conversations about, it can be politics, it can be conversations. It's moving away from gaming, and you have, at least in Spain, you have a few journalists and influencers who are into Twitch, and they are reaching out people who didn't hear about politics before, because they don't have a Facebook account, they don't have a Twitter account, they are not on Instagram because they are younger. So there you go. There you have politically biased platforms such as Parler. You had all the mainstream platforms for a specific niche, audience niche, such as Twitch. But we're in Europe, and there is no such a thing as a one size fits all. I am pretty sure that in your respective countries there are also things going on in terms of new platforms that are being used, and that might be developed by nationals, might be, I know in Eastern Europe, certain Russian applications are quite popular amongst the younger audience. I would like to hear about these new platforms. Anyone?
Well, if nobody is going to jump for the bait, then I'll go ahead again. So when it comes to Twitch, here I would mention MEP Timo Wölken from Germany. If you go to his European Parliament website page, I am not kidding, he has listed his Twitch account. And I think that says a lot, because you have of course, German federal elections coming up, and a great many number of voters are going to be turning 18, so voting age. And this is a great way, as Sebastian said, to reach out to voters who normally are not that active in politics, and as such would not follow, for example, a Facebook page, a Twitter handle, an Instagram page of a politician, but do care about gaming. And I would say, as a fellow gamer, that you have to go to where the people are. And I think this is an excellent and innovative best practice that I hope is going to catch on in 2021, especially considering that most people are at home. Some are turning to gaming. And as a result of that, it's a very easy way for you to reach a very new swath of voters. And I think when it comes to 2021, this is something we have to consider. So a lot of 17-year-olds are turning 18. For example, in my country, Hungary, you have to reach 18 to vote in the parliamentary election. In Austria and in Malta, the voting age is 16. So, there it's different. So it's 15-year-olds turning 16. And I see this trend whereby more and more organizations, leaders, policymakers favor lowering the voting age. And Sam was talking quite extensively about Scotland. In Scotland, this occurred. So voting age was lowered to 16. So I suspect that in order to gain more voters in 2021, you will see a trend whereby amendments are made to election laws, and you will have more and more countries within the European Union where the voting age or the engagement age will be lowered to 16. And here again, I would mention the European Citizens Initiative. There is broad consensus among all policymakers in the expert field and the civil society field that signing or launching a European Citizens Initiative should be an act which does not necessarily have to correspond with the voting age in European parliamentary elections, which is the case currently. So in Hungary, I had a lot of activists working on the Minority Safe Pack campaign as colleagues who were below the voting age of 18. They could not sign it themselves, but they could gather signatures. And I think it would really honor the contribution of young people across Europe, especially in this difficult time, if we would see a move towards more youth engagement and the possibility for them to actually vote and sign.
Thank you, Dinesh. Monica, quick question: how is the social media landscape in Poland? I myself haven't had a chance to do campaigning there. So, are the main social media platforms very popular, or do you have your own ones? Do you use any other platform? Probably the youth are onto something new. I'm very curious.
Okay, so firstly, all that the digitalization process has speeded up in an incredible way, and it has both pros and cons. For example, as far as elderly people are concerned, they are completely. They don't know nothing about the social media, so all that campaigns which are taking place via internet and many platforms, they are dedicated to only young people, I think. So maybe we should also think about kind of training for older people, how to use that platforms and tell something about that. Maybe in television, for example. I think that in Poland, still television is something the most important. Maybe when I look in my uncles and aunts, they know nothing about all that social media. For example, like Instagram. Maybe they have heard of the Facebook, but nothing about Instagram or Twitter. I think it's still dedicated only to the young people. So maybe we should take care of older people and tell more about that platforms, and later use they as an important tool during many campaigns.
And in Romania, I know they are crazy about Facebook. That's all I know, right, Emilian? But is there anything? I mean, have you come across, and you at your job, you also look at data, and you look at monitor online conversations. So have you noticed something interesting in this respect lately?
Generally speaking, not strictly related to Romania, it's clear that there is a lot of activity on private groups, and private groups have this unique no matter we're speaking of WhatsApp or other kind of other platform, private groups offer this, I would say 100% confidentiality, and there is no censorship. So sorry, I think I lost you there for a second. I'm not sure if it was my connection. Probably yes. So private groups will offer you the chance to really post everything, no matter how graphic it is. I'm not even sure if there is a filter for whatever explicit image, including on WhatsApp. And I think people love that. In general, usual folks love that. There are no restrictions. You see what you don't see on the news, or what you see on the news blurred, with the filter. You see it on WhatsApp group, whatever groups you are. You see it without the filter. So definitely, groups are very important now, like really, really important. Sam mentioned some of the mobilization in United States, which was done via platform, but it's actually via groups that are private. I mean, if it's a streaming platform or not, it doesn't really matter. In essence, it's still a private group, so people will communicate like in a private group. Not sure how that is going to end, but at this pace, at some point, we will see some regulation with these groups, because really anything in these groups, and there's no filter, so you might have illegal stuff there as well. And hey, you.
Okay, little one. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, she's really trying to jump into this conversation and to make a point. So apart from the Facebook, from the groups in general, what I see is specific to Romania. People love Facebook, and obviously there are more and more Instagram users. Yes, you're right. And TikTok is growing quite a lot, I have to say. A lot of people are on TikTok, and looking at some of the content, it's not specific to teenagers or under 25. They will still account for the majority of the users, but you will have a lot of people. And there is, even nowadays, there's a scandal, some kind of scandal in Romania with a guy who is influencing teenagers or whatever. Is something that is quite close to illegal stuff there. So I think he's going to be prosecuted. But it's on TV, it's everywhere. It made the news in every channel. So clearly TikTok has grew a lot, and I still believe YouTube is also important. But again, video and this short format videos, and then the possibility to live stream something easily, like on TikTok or on, it grew a lot. So it's not Facebook all as it used to be anymore.
Interesting you mentioned TikTok, Emilian, because we had two guests from the Mara Sandu campaign in Moldova a few weeks ago. They also mentioned how TikTok became a phenomenon during the Moldovan presidential election. And here I would mention that when it comes to Moldova, again, to this point, we have not heard any credible answer to explain this, but for some reason, according to Stats Counter and Global Stats, Pinterest is a very, very high penetration platform in Moldova. So 12.62% of social media users are primarily on Pinterest. And I have to say here that I have never heard of any European country where campaigns are conducted on Pinterest. So if you have any campaigners right now here from Moldova, please consider launching an innovative Pinterest campaign, and we'd love to have you on sometime.
Well, it's interesting. I haven't heard anything about that, I have to admit. again, you never know. I mean, if you see what's happening, the type of activity, and you have some data, you can probably reach to some conclusions. But well, the landscape is changing, and I think in a lot of countries, like in Romania, and I'm pretty sure it's the case with most of the countries in the world, the landscape has changed because of the confinement. So it's that kicking the ass that really made people consider other options, literally.
Okay. Okay, so before we wrap up, I'm really curious about this, about one of these emerging platforms, and I think Sam knows about one of them, Diblil. Diblil, is that the
DLive.
DLive.
It's super.
Tell us about it.
I was reading about it after what happened in the US this week, and it's quite an interesting platform because it's live streaming, but it's totally monetized. So the idea is that people can donate to you while you're live streaming. So that's why it's an interesting tool for campaigning, because it's a great way to generate revenue for your campaigns while streaming and talking about the content which you like. So for me, that's an interesting kind of platform because it's something we haven't really seen in the same way before. So the idea is that you can donate and you can get extra things by donating to the people speaking while it's happening, right? So you get extras through donations, which is kind of motivates people to donate and be part of a cause and a campaign. So it's a super interesting platform. And like Emilian was talking about the moderation, again, there's very little moderation on these platforms. I think on DLive, you have to, I think, initiate a trouble ticket or something to report content. And it's so hard to find where to do that because you don't do it on the content on the stream itself. You have to go through like the technical support of the platform or something like this. And I think it's been deliberately designed that way so that there is less moderation of content on these platforms. So again, it's a really interesting sphere to be in. And I think it would be interesting to see how that evolves going forward, not just used by those at the moment on the far right in the US, but on on a larger scale, perhaps in other countries as well, if we see that becoming a popular platform.
Is DLive used mostly by far right, or is it really unbiased?
I think it's popular amongst the far right. I don't have an understanding of the entire usage of the platform, but I think it has become a preferred platform of choice by those on the right and the far right. So again, I don't know everyone who's using it, but that's what I've understood, at least from the little bits of research that I've done since Wednesday.
Okay, so I think with that we can wrap things up because it's been an hour and it's Friday, the first Friday after holidays and the torture. I think it's now more than enough. Thank you very much for sharing your insights. What we will do is we will summarize those and share it with the community. I think we need to, there is one thing that we didn't talk about, which was the upcoming EU regulation on exactly this type of things, moderating illegal content, etc. And this European Democracy Action Plan, I think it's quite interesting and it's going to affect us in our daily lives. But we will have an opportunity to talk about it in the next couple of weeks. I'm pretty sure. Thank you guys for spending this hour with us, and see you around. See you in Brussels. See you in the empty streets of Brussels, or see you next week for the digital lunch. Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.